Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Reese, the Director of Special Projects at NJPSA and FEA, and also the Project Director for our Nicholson Foundation grant. I welcome you, and I'm happy that you decided to join us and hear more about our micro-credential process. So how did we get here? My colleagues and I have attended in the past few years several national conferences where we've learned about the ways other state associations are using micro-credentials as an innovative way to participate in professional learning. It's a relatively new concept for New Jersey educators, but we wanted to introduce these possibilities to principals, teachers, supervisors in our state. So we designed the application for the Transforming Early Childhood Education Leadership Institute with the idea of including the micro-credentials as a grant component, and Shannon Riley Ayers urged us to do so. As I've mentioned to you beforehand, there are no other early childhood education micro-credentials in the country, so we're pioneers in this process. So today's webinar has been designed to introduce you to this concept. And this opportunity is currently only available to those of you who participate on teams in our Institute series, along with your coaches, our steering committee members, and development team. We hope that you'll complete at least one micro-credential by the end of December. It's a job-embedded, hands-on, very reflective way to validate your work in early childhood education. We're anxious to hear about your responses to this process, and you certainly can use micro-credentials as credit toward your professional development requirements. This webinar will include two presenters. We'll have Kristen Franklin, who is the Micro-Credential Development Manager at Digital Promise, the platform that we're using for the development of these micro-credentials, and Tom Barkley, our FEA consultant, who is also on the development team and a coach for the project, who has provided the early childhood education content for these micro-credentials. Throughout their presentations, if you have any questions, please type them in on the box to your right on the screen, or at any other time, please send me a note or give me a call if you have anything you wonder about with this process. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you to Kristen, who's been a tremendous support for us. She's out in California, and she's been leading us through this process from the beginning. Kristen?
Thank you, Mary. As Mary said, my name is Kristen Franklin, and I'm the Microcredential Development Manager here at Digital Promise. And I've been with Digital Promise since March this year. My background is in informal learning for secondary and adult learners. And for the last 6 years, I've been targeting educator professional development in specific. In Digital Promise, their vision and goal is to solve issues of equity through technology. And so all of our projects, micro-credentials being only one of them, are research-backed, and we work directly with educators, schools, districts, and states in partnership. So the solutions that we found are grounded in the work and needs of educators and students. So nationally, as Mary said, competency-based education is a relatively new concept for students. And as all you experience, professional development for educators sometimes needs a little bit more help out of the sit and get cycle. So since 2014, Digital Promise has been building an ecosystem of micro-credentials, which we also call the platform, colloquially, which I think you all logged onto in the last day. And if you haven't, no worries. With Mary and Tom, we've developed 3 micro-credentials, and after you are done with those, you have the opportunity to submit more than 450 competency-based micro-credentials on a wide range of research-backed skills. So to kind of switch gears a little bit from the big picture, and I'll just give you a snapshot if I wanted to define what micro-credentials were before we move on to Tom. So micro-credentials, if you haven't heard, sorry, I couldn't hear. Okay, micro-credentials are digital certifications that verify an individual's competence in a specific skill or set of skills. And what I mean by set of skills is that each microcredential is a discrete skill. So a microcredential wouldn't be on project-based learning, but would be on a communication or collaboration plan for project-based learning. Or building positive classroom culture with students who come from poverty. These micro-credentials, when bundled together with similar subject matters or topics, with others of what the industry calls stacked. So all micro-credentials at Digital Promise are developed by subject matter experts and are definitely based in research. So when you come to a Digital Promise micro-credential, you know that it's going to be rigorous, you know that it's going to be a valuable asset to not only your own pedagogy and your professional learning, but at the same time that others know you've gone through this really difficult and enlightening, fascinating process that can go on your resume. It can, give you a leg up if you want to present at conferences, things like that. So it's a wonderful process. So you'll hear back from me about a little bit more weedy details, but for now, I'd like to turn it back to Tom to talk a little bit more about the micro-credentials that we've developed.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm Tom Barclay, as Mary introduced me already, and my role today is really to talk about how these 3 micro-credentials were developed. I'm happy to be here with you today. So one of the reasons, or a few of the reasons that we developed the micro-credentials, in addition to what Mary has already said, is to provide a way for you can see it for yourself if you have it in front of you, but to provide a way for educators in pre-K to 3rd grade to take charge of their own professional learning, to have some content really to take charge of. The second reason is to be able to demonstrate your competency and your leadership in that area. It's not one of the areas that's easy to prove competency so far. And to provide a way for you who are teachers among us to prove that you've demonstrated capacity to lead the community so that you're ready, you can demonstrate that you're ready for the challenge. So those are really the 3 reasons, main reasons that we came up with the competencies. Next, it's important to know that these micro-credentials are based in standards. There were 3 sets of standards that we used in this development. One, and I think the main one, is the National Association of Elementary School Principals competencies. The 3 micro-credentials that we have are entirely based on those 6 competencies. Additionally, we looked at the NAEYC standards, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, their program standards. And finally, we looked at the PSEL, the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders. So these micro-credentials, the content from them did not come out of the thin air. They were based on standards and research, as Kristen earlier pointed out. These are the 6 competencies that I think most of you have seen in the handout from NAESP. So you can see them, but I'll read them for those of you who are not on your computers. The first competency is to embrace the pre-K3 early learning continuum. The second is to ensure developmentally appropriate teaching. The third is to provide personalized learning environments. The fourth is using multiple measures of assessment to guide student learning growth. The fifth is building professional capacity across the learning community. And the 6th, is to make schools a hub of pre-K3 learning for families and communities. So worthy competencies, and you'll see when you take or when you complete one of the micro-credentials, you'll see them embedded in that. The 3 micro-credentials that are up in the stack, I think Kristen called it a stack. The 3 that are there so far are engage the whole child, preschool through 3rd grade. The second is engage the community in improving pre-K3 learning. And the last of the three is engage educators in collaborative learning to improve pre-K through 3 programs. And you see they all start with engage. The micro-credentials are all focused on engagement. So what we're hoping is that when you go to complete the micro-credentials that you will engage in the community in which you're working or intend to work. So very active. The first of the micro-credentials is engage the whole child preschool through 3rd grade. And this is entirely focused on the student, the whole child. That's why the title says the whole child. Not just the academics, but also the social, emotional, and growth and development. So specifically, folks would demonstrate proficiency in this micro-credential by implementing, you can see it, or those of you who are not on a computer, by implementing a system, everything's system of dynamic, active, personalized, and developmentally appropriate blended learning opportunities that meet the learning needs of every pre-K3 student. And secondly, one would demonstrate this competency, this micro-credential, by appropriately assessing student learning and redirecting when required. A couple of questions for those of you who are on the team would be, to what extent is or are your programs achieving this level of individualized, personalized learning for every student? You would ask yourself that question to know maybe which one of the micro-credentials to choose first. And then the second question is, what is the focus of your action plan? So those of you who are teachers in the teams, those of you who are principals or other types of leaders, or the coach, him or herself, what is the focus of your action plan right now? Maybe that would guide you to decide on which of the micro-credentials to start. The second of the two is engaging the community in improving K3 learning, and focused on the community as the other one was focused on the student. This is on the student also, but in the community, by identifying, creating linkages, working with internal and external stakeholders to build community support for the pre-K through 3 program, and establishing effective transitions. We've heard a lot about transitions and the need for quality transitions from program to program, school to school, and grade to grade. And the last of the 3 things that one would be demonstrating in this micro-credential would be identifying the necessary resources and setting policies to clarify the work. Again, the guiding questions for you who are thinking about which one of these micro-credentials you're going to start with would be, to what extent is or are your programs achieving this level of transition and community support? If it's good, then maybe you want to start with a different one. If it's something you want to focus on, then this would be the right one for you. Secondly, again, about the action plan. What's the current focus of your action plan? If it has to do with community engagement, then this would be the right one for you to start with. The last of the 3, and this was a choice that, frankly, I made because I wanted to draw attention to it, and that is the engagement of educators in collaborative learning environments to improve pre-K through 3 programs. And the reason I set it out separately is that it's my experience that when we get teachers who are involved pre-K3 in collaborative work, the student is definitely the beneficiary there. So I wanted to draw specific attention to that. And so it's focused on the teachers, whereas the first was on the student, the second on the community. This one is focused on the teachers and other practitioners who have something to do with the child. And you would demonstrate that by working collaboratively with your peers in classrooms and more formal situations, like PLCs, for example, to increase the likelihood of success for every student they serve, right? So working together for the kids. The second reason would be working collaboratively to serve the students best, including other pre-K-3 educators, resource staff, the parents, community members, community partners in those collaborations. Guiding question there is, to what extent is or are your programs promoting and realizing benefits from effective collaboration? And again, taking you back to your action plan, what is your current focus? If collaborative working together is a focus, then this might be the one to start with. So why complete a microcredential? In addition to what Mary already said in the beginning and what Kristen added to that, so professional learning for better outcomes for students, that would be one reason. Professional learning for personal growth. Maybe you just want to develop your own set of skills and knowledge. Professional learning for professional advancement, personal advancement. Professional learning for team growth. Most of us, if not all of us, are engaged in teaming together in this grant. So maybe the whole team can grow by working together on the same one. And the last is professional learning for community improvement, working together to improve the community in which your program is operating. Altogether, again, taking you back to the idea of engagement, being engaged in self-study, self-directed study, study that is applicable to you and your own particular environment. And this is the last of the slides, and it is the slide on which are located the links that Kristen now will talk about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. And yeah, these are the wonderful microcredentials. And just as an aside, Tom, do you mind leaving that slide up? Oh, no, that's perfect. Even better. So as Tom mentioned, the three microcredentials were developed based on research, and they're super rigorous. So, and pardon my California accent and way of speaking, sometimes it creeps out at weird times.
You're talking to New Jerseyans, Kristen.
Microcredentials have multiple parts. And so how I really think about microcredentials are two main areas. So the first part of the microcredential explains all about the competency. So you have the title, Engage Educators in Collaborative Learning to Improve Pre-K-3 Programs. Right below the apply button is what the competency is. What is someone competent at? What is a group of people doing that they're just excellent and experts in their field? Below that is the key method. What is the main element? How is someone showing that they are competent in a topic, subject matter, expertise? Below that is the method component, and that's much more details about the competency itself, how someone can achieve this competency. And so, and then the last part of part one is the research and resources. So research really is how the microcredential was supported and really built out. And the second part of it is that participation aspect. So once you get all the way down to right below resources, thank you so much, there's going to be 3 questions. Generally, the first question has to do with context and letting the person know who will be assessing these microcredentials. A little bit more about the context in which this competency is demonstrated. So each microcredential is demonstrated by evidence, and so that's always in part 2. You can upload evidence, video and audio, and the microcredential will detail out what kind of evidence that they're really looking for. So each question also has a rubric for what is passing and what is not passing. None of this is hidden. We want everyone to know what exactly a competence-based microcredential looks like. So we're going to be as specific as possible about what that is. And then part 3 across them is a reflection. So we want to hear from you about how this process was, and there's specific questions in there, as well as the rubric for passing. So I have a couple, so that's kind of the soup to nuts of what a microcredential is laid out, and they're all laid out like this for New Jersey, but definitely if you're looking kind of more broadly at other microcredentials on the Digital Promise platform, they're all going to look the same. We don't want to clutter up with Flash or anything like that. We want to make sure that you're getting exactly what you need and not being distracted by other things. So that's why it might seem a little bit like a form, and that's how it was structured. So once you log in to the platform itself, you'll be able to see these micro-credentials, but you'll definitely want to hang on to the Google Doc, I believe, that Ellen shared out yesterday afternoon or this morning, because these are private. You are the only folks that have access to them. So you'll want to make sure that you hang on to those. Sorry if someone's speaking in the background. So when you log in, you are the only people that are going to be able to submit these micro-credentials themselves. So submitting a micro-credential doesn't take an hour itself, but the lead up to it takes a little bit of time. So think about how you'll want to structure collecting your evidence and working as a team to submit a micro-credential. Like in the end, the micro-credential itself is a form, but it's really much larger than that. It's working with the team. It's finding evidence to show your competency. And so outside of that, you'll want to think about which microcredential you want to attack first. I've seen folks work on just a very simple calendar to say, we're going to talk about the microcredential, how we might want to structure talking together about it, next week, and then thinking about it maybe year long. I'm not sure how that is structured with action plans, but yeah, just think about how you want to submit this evidence. And since you're working in teams, I also encourage you to create a Google Drive folder or Dropbox or Box or whatever kind of this is supported in your district, a shared place where everyone on your team can really pop in that evidence. If you take a picture, if you take a video, just make sure that it goes into that drive. Let's see. Is there a question that I could answer so far?
I don't see anything.
I don't see any questions.
No. Okay, fantastic. So once you are done with submitting your microcredential, this is a double blind system. So the people that are assessing, so Mary and Tom and folks that they have identified that are subject matter experts and can assess these, will receive it, and they don't know your name, they don't know where you're coming from. So you'll want to scrub any sort of identifying information from that evidence. And then they'll assess it and give you feedback. So if you're not quite there yet, that's totally normal. This, try and adopt a growth mindset with some of these. And it is very common to not get it on the first try, because for a lot of folks, this is a brand new system. So kind of understanding and getting used to the competency-based model is a new thing. So maybe everyone's not going to get it on the first try. We encourage you to try again. And so on the back end, there's a place for the assessor and the issuer, so Tom and Mary, well, there's a place for them to offer generous and rigorous feedback. So if if you're not quite there, they'll offer feedback and give coaching on how to think about it for the next time. Let's see. So once you are awarded the microcredential, you get to share it as widely as you like. So it can go on your LinkedIn, social media, Twitter, Instagram, however. And you can also share it via email. Now, the nice thing about how we have it structured with setting up for email is that you can share as many details as you want. So if you are working with a coach, sometimes I've seen folks share all of the assessor comments with their coach, just so they can have like a really transparent streamlined sense of feedback between them. And sometimes you don't really want to share that with anybody else. So just saying, okay, you know, boss, here is my microcredential. We earned it, and that's pretty much it. And the last thing I wanted to share at the 10,000 view feet of these is that all the Digital Promise microcredentials are open badge compliant. And this is a trend that we have really been working with Badger, which is the badging system that almost everybody uses, to make sure that it's portable. So if you were to come out and work in California, you know, bring your badge. You can bring your badge with you. We really believe, since Digital Promises on the front line of equity work, and we want to make sure that, you know, open access and open resources are available for everyone. That is definitely part of our DNA. Let's see. I think that's it for me, but I'm open to your questions, and kind of bring it on back to Mary and Tom.
I don't see any written down questions.
If you have some questions for Kristen or for Tom, would you please write them in the box off to the right?
And as you're kind of thinking about your questions, I know Tom and Mary are really lovely and accessible, but if you have any like platform specific helps, we do have, as you can see, a help center in the upper right hand corner, and that'll direct you to a fresh desk. It's just basically a help center. And we have some FAQs and things like that if you need the answer at 2 o'clock in the morning. But if you can't like find it, just submit a ticket, and that goes to everyone on the microcredential team at Digital Promise. And so the first one up in the morning will respond to that. So we found that if that's a better system for you rather than just emailing, that you'll get an answer right away.
So Kristen, one of the questions is, what's the estimated turnaround time for assessment results?
That's an excellent question. And we want to honor the time that educators and teams put into submitting these microcredentials. So it's 14 business days. And we have a really good return rate. So I think, you know, less than 5% of people need to wait more than that. And, you know, not the excuses, but the reasons I'm here is like, you know, things happen in people's lives. But yeah, it's 14 days.
And I want to once again reiterate the idea or the notion that when you choose to do this, you may choose to begin with any one of the three. It's totally up to you where you are, what you're working on, perhaps what your action plan includes. And I also want to mention that this whole process is free. There's no cost to you to engage in the process. If you do look on the Digital Promise website, you'll see that there are costs for some of the micro-credentials, but at this point, there is no cost for the three that we've introduced to you today.
Exactly. And we do try and work with organizations on grants. So that's why we really try to keep our costs low and don't want to pass those on to educators. Sometimes when you do see costs to them, it's basically to pay assessors for their time, because we want to make sure that everyone is getting paid for their work.
I'd like to reiterate once again that we are the pioneers here, and we have heard from so many different people outside of our grant team group that people are really wanting to engage in this process. So we've kept it private because we want you to try it out and let us know what your feelings are and see whether we need to tweak things and see how well the whole concept and the tools are useful to you. So I encourage you all to try them out as your team and, you know, submit them, you know, in the next few months or so. So does anybody else have any questions? Somebody does? No. Okay.
Before we go, I just wanted to also thank Mary and Tom for all the thought, partnership, and work on these. It was a really wonderful experience, and I encourage everyone to kind of look at these micro-credentials today. I was blown away and really excited that we're working with, pre-K 3 educators. I think it's a really invigorating and innovative group of educators. So I'm very excited that these are now live and you all get to participate in them.
Well, thanks, Kristen.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed our partnership with you as well. And I don't think there's a more passionate bunch of educators than people who work with young children. So I have to echo that as well. Okay, Tom's good.
I'm good.
All right, everybody, I thank you for your time. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. And I hope that you'll accept this challenge to be the pioneer in New Jersey on the completion of microcredentials. Thank you all, and thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.